G'day Bomber fans, it's time for another VFL recap. Lots has been happening in the reserves in the last fortnight. We've had some positional changes that are working wonders, some previously underperforming veterans that have found serious form, some young guns on a tear. There's lots to talk about. I'll get to all the AFL listed players who have played in the last couple of rounds, but first a little recap of events. We had two games, one up in the Gold Coast against the reigning premiers. It was an old-fashioned shootout. In the end, they were the better of the two sides, winning by 3 goals, 111 to 93. A great effort against a finals contending team away from home with 3 AFL emergencies left behind. Very good effort. The next game was the complete opposite in terms of vibes. It was a wet and grubby day at Windy Hill against Collingwood. Real slog of a game. We got the job done really easily. Struggled to score early, but got over the top of them after half-time and ended up belting the Pies 98 to 63 in the end. Hopefully that's a sign of things to come this weekend. Let's get into the individual players and their performances. Elijah Tsatas. To be honest, it's just good to see him go out and play full games of footy. He's been the sub for a while now, so we haven't really seen him go out and play 4 quarters until these last 2 weeks. It's also good to see him play inside midfield minutes because that is the player he is. People are very critical of him when he plays on a wing in the seniors, but that just isn't his role. He looked at home in these last 2 weeks. He was good against the Suns without breaking the game apart. He completely tore the game open against the Pies, though. He was unreal. He was a clearance machine. He likes playing the Pies. He had 40 against them earlier in the year, was close to it again last weekend while also gathering 11 clearances. He was everywhere. I know he's deserving of being in the AFL squad of 26, but I would love to see him just keep rolling out these performances in the VFL to build confidence. He's looking deadly at this level in his preferred position. Ben Hobbs just played the one VFL game, his first in a while. He was returning from injury, and you could tell early he was looking quite rusty. He wasn't involved too much in the first half. I feel like he really found his way into the game later, though. He did well to shake off the cobwebs and finished really strongly. He worked hard inside contests, won himself a bunch of clearances late in the game. He was placed on the AFL team's emergency list the following week ahead of Shiel and Setterfield, who remained in the VFL. Speaking of Dylan Shiel, I said in my last video that needed to start seeing him have those pick-me games. He must have heard me because he's had 2 of them in a row. He was fantastic against Gold Coast, 26 touches, a goal, 10 score involvements, 9 clearances. He was doing heaps for us going forward, and it was the first time in a while he looked like an AFL starter playing in the VFL, and the great thing is he did the same the following week against the Pies. He backed it up. 32 disposals, 6 clearances, 6 tackles. Him and Tsatas were running rampant against the Pies. That's 15 clearances and almost 60 disposals in 2 games. You got to think whether or not he should be used in the AFL side off the back of this form. That's if a spot opens up. If he keeps playing like this, you would just have to throw him in the AFL because he's in very, very good touch right now, which is really promising as we approach the end of the year. He could turn out to be a bit of a hidden weapon for us. I've loved his last fortnight. Will Setterfield, another mature-aged midfielder, dropped to the Rezzies. It's meant our opponents have had a tough time in the guts with Tsatas, Shiel and Setterfield there, and Hobbs in the Gold Coast match. Setterfield has been pretty solid. He hasn't demanded his spot back in the team. I think he's lagging a bit behind Shiel and Tsatas, in my opinion, but he isn't playing badly. He's going about it, playing a good, solid footy. I reckon he had more of an impact in the Gold Coast game, despite what the stat sheet says. That big body was coming in handy in the guts. I felt more of a defensive shift at times against the Pies. Probably need a little bit more from a senior player, but coming back from an injury, he hasn't done a lot wrong. Let's see if he can build from here. Lewis Hayes, he had a really tough week out against the Suns. He was often on Ethan Reid, who had a big day out. He hasn't had a lot of help back there with Wiedemann suspended and Reid injured. He's the only key defensive option on our list, not playing in the VFL or unavailable. So a lot of pressure on him to perform. I don't think he did against the Suns. He had a bit of a down game, I reckon. He let his direct opponent get some marks and chances a bit easily at times. I thought he was better against the Pies. He was very polished. He was solid. Conditions suited a defender, but even in the wet, he rarely made too many defensive mistakes. So it was good to see him play himself back into form a little bit. Always a watch with young players to see if they drop their heads at all. Hayes didn't. I think he responded well. Nick Bryan, he has had an interesting fortnight. He had to go up against Ned Moyle again, who he matched up on in his only AFL game earlier in the year. Moyle is in a similar position to Bryan. He's a good young ruck, not getting many similar senior opportunities, but Moyle showed Bryan that he has a bit of work to do. He got the better of him. Bryan's stats look all right, but he had 7 less hitouts, 5 less disposals, 5 less clearances, 3 less contested marks. He was beaten pretty solidly in my eyes. The following week, it was back to usual. Bryan bullying state-level rucks. Ilaro Smith was destroyed, 45 hitouts to 12. It was pretty ruthless. Bryan also had 13 clearances, 26 disposals, 21 of them were kicks. There were at times where the Pies had to put guys like Ash Johnson in the ruck just to try something different on ground level because Bryan's impact was that large. It was a pretty incredible performance. Davey Jr, he played up forward a lot more than usual in the Rezzies. Usually find him involved in stoppages, but I guess because we have a full AFL listed midfield with O'Neill and Haitley there as well, it makes it hard to fill in some other players for roles. He's been lively. You like seeing him around the footy because something fun usually happens. Same with his brother, who I'll talk about in a sec as well. Seeing them together is good. I would like to see him hit the scoreboard more, considering he is a small forward in the AFL. He can create some pressure behind Menzies and Guelphy and Hind. Maybe in the next patch of games we'll see that, hopefully. hopefully. Luamon Lual, I thought he was brilliant against Collingwood. His stats don't really tell the full story, but I would have had him in our 4 or 5 or even 3 or 4 or 5 best players on the day. His defensive work was outstanding, and he won a lot of his own footy as well. He was much quieter against Gold Coast. That was definitely a down day, but 8 intercepts and 18 touches, a handful of tackles and pressure acts as well. That was one of his better games in the red and black against Collingwood. He did so well to stem the influence of their smaller forwards. They had chances to score, Collingwood, but they weren't completely shut out of the game, but players like Lual made it very hard for them to do so. It was a really promising game from him. Just want to see more like it to close the year out. Jayden Davey. The thing about Jayden is that he is ultra dangerous in patches. He has some great moments and leads to goals or goal scoring opportunities from those moments, but not regularly. He's probably only had 2 or 3 or 4 a game, and that's about it for impact. He scored 2 goals in this period. He helped set up a few more, but he has 4 goals from his last 3 games, 11 from 12 this season. He's out of contract, obviously had that injury, but he definitely needs to start showing more than what he has so far this year if he wants to remain a big part of the future. There are glimpses of a player there, but they're becoming so rare in games. Only 2 games this year with multiple goals and 4 others where he was goalless. I would love another big game like we saw a month or 2 ago against Williamstown. Archie Roberts, he's just solidly going about it as usual. Super consistent player. I love young Archie. I love watching him play. You rarely see him drop under 20 disposals. He's so reliable on that wing, both going forward and lending a hand down back. He wasn't a standout in either game, but he was definitely one of our better players in both. He knows how to find the footy, and good things usually happen when he does. I thought he was really good against Collingwood. He had a great contested mark deep inside 50 that led to a goal and probably should have kicked another, but was a bit rushed when putting ball to boot. I'm not sure if we see him in 2024 in the AFL. Probably a bit late now with all the players we have in the reserves as it is. But this first year for Roberts has 100% been a success. There are signs of a real player there. He's probably my favourite VFL performer this year, just his consistency throughout and the fact that he has that pesty side to him. He isn't a nice player. He's nice with ball in hand, but he gets under the skin of opposition players, which I love. Been very fun to watch this year. Vigo Visentini, he has had it pretty rough recently. He's had some tough matchups against a better Gold Coast team. The weather didn't really suit him up forward against the Pies, so we haven't seen him impact the game much at all. I thought he did well to present against the Collingwood at least. He found himself in a lot of space on a few occasions, giving the odd hand pass off to smaller runners. No big clunks or goals or anything noteworthy. He had a solid enough game in poor conditions, but after those game-breaking performances earlier in the year, it's just a bit meh. To be fair, this was the expectation. A rookie-listed ruck is never going to be amazing in his first year consistently. Tex Wanganeen. Now, I'm excited to talk about him because he's had a positional change that I really did not see coming. He was thrown onto the halfback flank a few weeks back. He looked promising, but now he is starting to really inject himself into games. It's making me wonder if there is hope left for his AFL career. His game against Gold Coast was fantastic. 22 touches, 8 intercepts, the most on the ground, 8 rebound 50s as well. Wanganeen was genuinely one of our best players on the ground, which I haven't said in well over a year, I reckon. He was quieter the following week against the Pies, but still solid down back. He looks like a natural defender. He needs to have more of those Gold Coast games. He is out of contract, needs to show why he deserves a new deal. That is that. There were only 12 VFL performers from our AFL listed players over the last fortnight. It's been a fun 2 weeks of footy for the reserves. 1 win, 1 loss, some great players putting their hands up for AFL selection. We'll see if they're successful in doing so. Like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, and as always, go Bombers.